So today's lecture will be relevant to protozoa. So far we have discussed almost all the groups except protozoa and fungi. So we'll discuss protozoal classification. अच्छा इसमें थोड़ा सा हिस्टोरिक पर्पस भी डिस्कस कर लेंगे हम हिस्टोरिक क्लासिफिकेशन किस तरह से हुई है और इस वक्त जो एक्सेप्टेड क्लासिफिकेशन है वो क्या है और बहुत सारे प्रोटोजोल मेंबर्स ऐसे हैं जो पहले प्रोटोजोआ में क्लासिफाई होते थे एज प्रोटोजोन बट नाउ दे आर द पार्ट ऑफ द अदर किंगडम्स ठीक है स्पेशली या तो वो किंगडम एनिमेलिया में रिपोर्ट हुए हैं अब लेटर ऑन 16 एस राइबोसोमल डीएनए और 18 एस राइबोसोमल डीएनए की जो जब से क्लासिफिकेशन स्कीम्स आई हैं तो उन्होंने थोड़ा सा क्लासिफिकेशन को काफ़ी मॉडिफाई किया है और प्रीवियसली जो ग्रुप्स अकॉर्डिंग टू phenotypic characters क्लासिफाई हुआ करते थे वो अब because of their genetic makeup they are now classified into an entirely different group. तो वो कौन से हैं वो भी हम साथ साथ डिस्कस करते जाएंगे इस प्रोटोजोन्स में ठीक है जी तो अगर हम एज अ ग्रुप देखें so basically protozoans they are the simplest creatures. They are the unicellular organisms but a bit complex than prokaryotic organisms because they are the ones which are unicellular but they have complex nucleus and they are classified as eukaryotes and they are also depending for their nutritional needs on different bacterial cells and the nutrients which are dissolved or you can say in the solution form or in the aquatic environment. So they are also the chemoheterotrophic organisms. So they feed and their feeding stage is known as trophozoites and their nutrition that depends on bacteria and other particulate nutrients. Right. Now a little bit importance of protozoal species, like one of them is Nosema locusti. It is one of the insect pathogen and it is sold as the insecticides or you can say it is used as the microbial control agent to kill grasshoppers and आजकल आपको पता है कि बहुत पिछले कुछ दिनों में ये सिलसिला चल भी रहा था कि वो बहुत सारे इंसेक्ट्स जो हैं वो पूरी फसलें वीट की राइस की और उनको तबाह किया तो उस हवाले से भी इसकी थोड़ी सी एक इम्पोर्टेंस है कि इसको एज इंसेक्टिसाइड यूज करते हैं टू किल ग्रास हॉपर्स एंड basically it affects the digestive system of the grasshoppers so आहिस्ता जो है grasshoppers they become lethargic and they stop taking the nutrients or the food है they stop attacking and then later on it leads to the killing of the grasshoppers so इसको as a control microbial control agent के तौर पे भी use किया जाता है to save the crops from the insects लेकिन अब जो इसकी recent classification है Nosema locusti की ये it is now characterized in the kingdom fungi ठीक है लेकिन ये बहुत अरसे तक जो है it was the part of the phylum the group Protozoa ठीक है. अच्छा, malaria cannot be ignored when we talk about protozoans because its clinical importance is very high, and which is the fourth leading cause of death. And there are different protozoans which can affect you differently in the different clinical conditions. Like for example, we have Entamoeba histolytica, which is one of the protozoan. It affects you by causing dysentery, amoebic dysentery. There are so many other diseases which are caused by the protozoans. How they do survive in the adverse conditions? There are some protozoans which produce protective capsular structure for the adverse condition, and this capsular structure is called as cyst. So these cysts, they are present in soil, in your environment, and whenever they get a chance to germinate, so they can germinate into a new or a growing one protozoal species. So this cyst, basically it is having a stuff covering around it, so it survives when there are drought conditions, nutrient scarcity, or the oxygen unavailability, and when temperatures are not suitable, or harsh conditions means when any kind of harsh conditions can exist, and the cyst can preserve the cells and survive in such conditions as well. So according to the locomotory structures, there are different 4 classes, commonly 4 to 5 classes, and in which protozoans can be divided, because mostly locomotory structures are those structures which are different in different protozoans. The initial classification of protozoans, they were depending on their mostly their locomotory organs, and other than locomotory organs, their size and their habitat, they were used to classify them. So there are different authors like Heyman and Parker and Haswell and Honeberg. They all classified the protozoa according to their locomotory organs. And you see that there are 4 classes: flagellates, sarcodines, sporozoans, and ciliates. And as you all know that flagellates means they use flagella, sarcodina, they use pseudopodia, sporozoans, they don't have any apparent locomotory structures, and ciliates have cilia. All of them, they are unicellular. All of them, they are heterotrophs. And there are different unique characteristics, and there are different examples like trypanosoma belongs to flagellates, amoeba belongs to sarcodina, and plasmodium belongs to sporozoans, and paramecium belongs to ciliates. So this classification you have already studied in the intermediate classes, but later on it was Levin and his colleagues who proposed a new classification of protozoan, but this is also about the story of, you can say, 1980s, right? That classification of protozoans, and they were classified into 7 different phylums, and we'll discuss one by one. And these 7 phylums were sarcomastigophora, labyrinthomorpha, Apicomplexa, microspora, acetospora, mixospora, and the Ciliophora. We'll move one by one. So let's move towards phylum Sarcomastigophora. So the word mastigo, it represents flagella. So it indicates that this phylum, it contains those organisms which are motile by having flagella, and presence of a single nucleus is one of the characteristic of phylum Sarcomastigophora. And they are the word Sarcomastigophora. It indicates the combination of Sarcodena and Mastigophora both. So the organisms that belongs to this phylum, they either have pseudopodia or they have flagella or they have both, right? So this our phylum, it represents asexual reproduction, but mostly asexual reproduction is the mean of reproduction. But whenever there is sexual reproduction, it is by the syngamy, means fusion of gametes. And this phylum can be further divided into 3 subphylum, and these subphylum includes Mastigophora, Opellinata, and Sarcodena. So Mastigophora and Sarcodena, they are relatively large comparative to Opellinata, and we'll discuss. Mastigophora means flagellated organisms, and these flagellated organisms, they are of 2 types. Phytoflagellates means plants like protozoans, and the zooflagellates means animal like protozoans. So basically the word phyto, it indicates any sort of pigments, because some of the organisms, they are pigmented and they also have some pigments like plants. So that's why they are called as the phytoflagellates. Okay. While Sarcodena, they are the amoeboid protists, and they are present in fresh and salt water. Examples include Mastigophora की examples में Trypanosoma, Volvox, Giardia, Leishmania, Cryptomonas, and Euglena. They are the famous members of the subphylum Mastigophora. And the subphylum Opellinata includes one of the prominent members, Opellina. So basically ये gut में रहते हैं different animals के, frogs वगैरह के, and where they serve as the symbionts, you can say, and or the saprophytes, which depend on the already digested material in their gut. And Sarcodena involves amoeba, entamoeba, and the world famous Naegleria. These are the diagrams of some of the members of phylum Sarcomastigophora. It includes Euglena. This one is Opellina. This one is Protoopellina. And this one is Giardia. And this one is Entamoeba stolytica. And this one is Alphidium. Next is the phylum Labyrinthomorpha, because Sarcomastigophora is that phylum which is relatively known to you people. Now moving towards the Labyrinthomorpha, these are basically the inhabitants of marine and estuarine water. So estuarine water is that water which is present in estuaries, and estuaries are those places where a river meets sea. So mostly they are found in those places, and they are basically saprophytic and parasitic on different algae, and they are basically the algal parasites, and they produce zoospores, and their shape is mostly either they have a spindle shape or they have this well organized structure. So there are different examples. One of the example is the labyrinthomorpha, which is represented here, and the other example is labyrinthula, which is a sort of a spindle shaped structure represented here in this diagram. So this was all about the labyrinthomorpha, and now moving towards the phylum Apicomplexa. This is that phylum which is also known as sporozoans, or you can say sporozoa. All the species, they are parasitic in nature, and you know Plasmodium is one of the famous member of this group, and they are reproduced by microspores. So malarial parasitic life cycle you have studied in your intermediate classes. So they produce different kinds of spores, and they lack any special locomotory organs, and definitely then they require different hosts to complete their life cycles. And their life cycle is usually completed in 2 hosts. So they reproduce sexually by syngamy, because अगर आपको मलेरियल पैरासिटिक लाइफ साइकिल थोड़ी सी याद हो तो वहां पर भी जो है 2 डिफरेंट तरह के गैमीट्स बनते हैं, एंड एट सम stages of the life cycle they are fused and they form a diploid nucleus, and then the cycle moves on. So they produce both sexual spores and as well as the asexual spores. Examples I told you, Plasmodium. We have heard about Plasmodium. And now moving towards the Toxoplasma. Toxoplasma is also one of the member of sporozoans, and it causes a disease which is known as toxoplasmosis, and its life cycle is presented over here. And it is actually, it also has 2 hosts, 2 or 3 hosts basically. It's cats are the definitive host of this, but it can also target human beings. And as you can see that in the diagram, that cats and its relatives, they are the host of this toxoplasma, and they produce a disease which is known as toxoplasmosis. So if the spores they are ingested by the contaminated food and water by the pregnant woman specifically, so they can be transmitted through placenta, and it can affect the fetus and it cause different problems. तो आपको थोड़ा सा इसको ज़रा इस पे सर्च करके और इसको ग्रुप पे डिस्कस करेंगे हम कि व्हाट इज दी टॉक्सोप्लाज्मोसिस एंड इसके जो इफेक्ट्स हैं वो क्या हैं, ठीक है जी। सो मोस्टली वो वहाँ पे ये टॉक्सोप्लाज्मोसिस की इन्फेक्टिविटी ज़्यादा उसका रेशो है, जहाँ पर जो कैट्स हैं वो उनका एस्पैट बहुत ज़्यादा यूज़ किया जाता है या एस्पैट उनको रखा जाता है, तो उनको फिर वैक्सीनेशन उनकी करवाई जाती है कैट्स की विद फॉर टॉक्सोप्लाज्मा, वो ज़रूरी है, ठीक है। तो इस तरह का स्ट्रक्चर होता है टॉक्सोप्लाज्मा का, और ये द known agent which is the causative agent of toxoplasmosis is the toxoplasma gondii. इसी तरह प्लाज्मोडियम की भी different species हैं. There are 4 to 5 species of plasmodium, but the most severe form is the plasmodium falciparum. तो ये टारगेट करती है आपके जो सेल्स हैं उनको, blood cells को. And then you also have cryptosporidium parvum, which is also the belongs to the phylum Apicomplexa. Then we have phylum microspora. They are the obligatory intracellular parasites found in nearly all major animal groups, and they lack mitochondria because they are the parasites, so they do not have any they do not need any energy sources, so they simply target the animal groups, and now their DNA structure or the genetic makeup has determined that they should be classified either into a fungi kingdom, or they should be made into at least a sister kingdom to fungi, if not included in fungi. So they have a unique genetic makeup now. Previously, it was included in the phylum Protozoa. So Nosema, I told you in the early slides that Nosema is one of the member of this group, phylum Microspora, and now later on it is now classified as the fungi. तो जब आप इसको सर्च करेंगे इंटरनेट पर तो इसकी जो क्लासिफिकेशन आएगी तो उसमें आपको ये किंगडम फंजाई में ही इंक्लूडेड मिलेगी. ठीक है. Then we have phylum acetospora. They are also all parasitic, and they affect mostly marine invertebrate, and particularly they target annelids and mollusks. And a unique thing is that they are unicellular, but the spores they produce, they are multicellular. And one of the example is the haplosporidium. इसकी जो डायग्राम है वो यहाँ पर आपको नजर आ रही है, किस तरह से इसके सेलुलर स्ट्रक्चर जो है वो नजर आता है. Okay, then we have phylum mixozoa. मोस्टली जितने भी अभी हम प्रोटोजोन्स पढ़ रहे हैं, बहुत कम ऐसे हैं जो बहुत ही कोई रेयर कोई स्पीशी है जो कि हेट्रोट्रॉफिक नहीं है कंप्लीटली. तो अब थोड़ा सा ना आप इस पे ज़रा मुझे रिस्पॉन्ड कीजिएगा व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पे कि इज देयर एनी प्रोटोजोअल स्पीशी which can undergo photosynthesis or autotrophic in nature. I hope कि आपको शायद कोई एक आध तो मिल जाए, लेकिन रेयर है ये phenomena. So mostly they are heterotrophic, and heterotrophic में भी they usually adopt parasitic mode. So they are also parasitic, and it is now the phylum mixozoans. The members, they according to their genetic makeup, they are now included in phylum Cnidaria. Phylum Cnidaria is one of the phylum of kingdom Animalia. So although they have many differences, their cellular structure is different, but their genetic makeup is matched with the phylum Cnidaria. So after this discovery, a new classification in the phylum Cnidaria was proposed with the taxonomic revision, right? So the examples include Myxidium and Mixoblast. And it targets mostly the fishes. And then we have phylum Ciliophora. It is one of the largest phylum. And this is the phylum which is representing the free living organisms. And mostly the members, they are the commensals, means taking benefits from the host, not harming the host if they are not giving any benefit, right? So some are parasitic, but mostly they are free living, right? As its name indicate that they have cilia or ciliary organelles, if not present entirely in the life cycle, but they represent cilia at least in one of the stages of their life cycle. So and one of the unique feature that they have, mostly they have two different types of nucleuses, macronucleus or the micronucleus, and then we have heterotrophic nutrition, and asexual reproduction is by transverse binary fission. Right. Binary fission is of two types: longitudinal binary fission and transverse binary fission. The only difference is the plane of the division, right? Binary fission, which is longitudinal binary fission, so it divides the cells into two by length. Okay, and transverse binary fission basically divides the cell into two by width, right? But they also undergo budding and the multiple fissions. And the example include, one of the famous example is the paramecium, and the other example is the balantidium, right? So balantidium is the only member only known member है which is pathogenic to human beings of this group. ठीक है, तो आई होप कि ये जो डिफरेंस है बाइनरी फिजन के क्लियर हो गया होगा. जैसे ल्यूक, अगर मैं आपसे बात करूँ, यूग्लिना है, तो उसकी जो बाइनरी फिजन है वो लॉन्गिट्यूडनल बाइनरी फिजन है, वो बाय लेंथ डिवाइड होता है. लेकिन इसके जो मेंबर्स हैं पैरामीशियम वगैरह, इनमें जो बाइनरी फिजन होता है विच इज द ट्रांसवर्स टाइप. ठीक है, सो बैलेंटिडियम कोलाई एक डिजीज कॉज करता है which is known as balantidiasis basically. So it is the only member of the ciliate phylum which is known to be pathogenic to humans. So ये हमारे पास इसका लास्ट फाइलम था, फाइलम सीलियोफोरा, और ये उसके कुछ मेंबर्स हैं. कि यहाँ पर मैं कुछ पिक्चर्स पैरामीशियम टाइप, या आप देखें हर ग्रुप, हर इसमें पे कहीं ना कहीं सीलिएट्स जो है वो सीलिया जो है दे आर द पार्ट ऑफ द सेल. दैट्स व्हाई दे आर ग्रुप्ड इनटू द फाइलम सीलिएटा. तो इसको बस फिर यहीं तक रखते हैं. इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन यू कैन आस्क in the comment section.